drop. Are you gonna blow your head off? Take good aim and don't forget to duck. Life sucks every Monday and all the way to Sunday, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't care how you're doing, what's up or how's it hanging. I'd like to buy this world one last drink. And life sucks all of the time, stick it up your sunshine, and then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day.
Welcome to the Crazy Life, everyone. My name is Jen. I am your hostess for this evening. And with me, of course, as always, is Bryan and Henno. Hi, guys.
Howdy.
Hi. You say of course, but this is the first time the three of us have recorded in like a month.
It has been.
It has.
You're kidding.
No,
Really?
last episode was me and Henno. The one before that was just me and you.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I was traveling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one before that was maybe all three of us. I don't remember.
Yeah,
It's
it was Chicago.
but that's still like 3 weeks ago. So yeah, it's been a little bit. Yeah.
And I will apologize ahead of time because I am sleepy tonight because I've been running around all day. But there's no way that I was going to miss another episode. So.
Fair enough.
Yes.
Oh, I hit the wall like 10 minutes before we were supposed to get together on Skype. I was like, not
no.
good timing.
I'm due to take another Benadryl, but I put it off for that reason because I was like, I should probably wait.
Entertaining.
It's like halfway through, Bryan starts drooling.
Yeah, that's normal though.
Right. Well, how's your guys' week been? Who wants to start?
Not me.
You don't want to start?
No.
Henno, how was your week?
Well, my week started off great because I celebrated 9 years without having a drink. Yay!
Super thirsty.
Yeah. Yeah. Boy, am I thirsty.
Yeah.
Yeah. April 4th. That's my 4/4/2000 and what is that? 7, right? Yeah, 2007. That's my sobriety day.
Nice.
Celebrate by opening a cold one, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Crack that one right open. Well, that's what that's Sharon kept tempting me the night before. It's like, come on. You ready to go? Ready to throw it all away? Come on, let's go. Let's see some shots.
She just comes home with like a 24 pack. She's like, terrible. No, yeah.
You know, we joke about that all the time because it really is that easy. It's like, hey, let's go do some shots, you know?
Yeah.
But you don't.
Well, I mean, like in Chicago, you know, you 2 times, 3 times, whatever, were with us at bars, you know, and you easily could have just ordered a beer, you know, and you didn't, you know, it just that simply, you could have been like, I'm going to go ahead, and there it is. And, you know, and you didn't.
And what's weird is every once in a while, I've been around like, you know, whatever, somebody drinking wine or something like that. And like, I've actually almost played it out, like picking it up, like, I just grab that and take a sip of it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it's not like one of those things where I'd actually do it, but I actually think about it enough where I go, wow, it just reminds me, it really is that simple.
Yeah.
You know, and the fact that I never think about it that's the miracle.
Yeah.
You know, that was
right.
It was about, I want to say it was about 3 months in, maybe, and about 2.5, 3 months in, and I was out on my mountain bike, and with 12 steps, the third step in, at least with people have little prayers or sayings or whatever that go along with them, and some of them are done in kind of like almost like a ritualistic thing. And so there's this, it's called the third step prayer, and I was trying to memorize it. And I was on my mountain bike one day, and I'm on the trail, and I stopped for a second just to look at it, and it hit me like like all of a sudden this awareness, like I haven't thought about having a drink. And it was profound. Like it was really profound, like that moment of all of a sudden it's like, wow, I haven't even thought about it.
Right.
Because that's all I thought about.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not all I thought about, but, for the most part, it was like, that was the first thing that happened after work. There's no question. It's go by the grocery store, grab a couple bottles of wine, head home, do whatever I'm going to do for the night. But there was, it was always booze, something like that. And to have a day go by where, that I like, wow, that's not even on my radar anymore. It's a huge deal.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So on Monday I went to a meeting, a birthday meeting, and there were a lot of people that I've known for a long time, that they've seen me all the way through. And it was just great to basically say thank you, and express my gratitude for, I shared what I've been talking to you guys about what's going on at work and stuff with, some of the fear and anxiety and this and that, and how I've been able to get through it.
Mm.
They're all things that normally I would have drank to just forget about, to zone out.
Yeah, sure. Take the edge off. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yep.
And realistically, I mean, drinking I've shared this before. Drinking was when I could be in the moment, because everything I can just blot everything else out. I'm just boom, I'm in my zone. It's like, being sober, you have to have tools to replace that.
Yeah.
And that was that's what I expressed my gratitude about is, to be in a transitional period, and, and how do I do it? Because a friend of mine one time shared with me the idea of, I want to hear how you get through a day sober. That's why I come. I want to know that what I'm doing is the thing that you're doing, and we should just keep doing it together. And it's more than just that. It's about emotional sobriety too. And that's really, I don't, like I said, I don't struggle with taking a drink. Now my struggles are on an emotional level with dealing with, those feelings and that kind of stuff. So,
right. Yeah.
So actually dealing with them versus drinking them. Okay.
Yeah.
Exactly. Ignoring them, hiding them.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
because it's so easy to hide them that way. I totally get what you're saying about that you can live in the moment that way, because it's easy, to do that, because, anyone with anxiety, can certainly understand that. You get somewhere and it's like, I'll have a drink. Like I said before, I'll just take the edge off. You have a couple drinks, you've taken the edge off, and now you're like, hey, I'm Mr. Social, Whereas beforehand you were anxious and nervous and, whatever. So I get it. Yeah. So it's great that you're where you're at now. Yeah.
It surely is. Yeah. And, really the other reason that I like to stay involved with, a program is I'm around people that have also at 9 years or 10 years got complacent.
Yeah.
I don't need this.
Right.
I don't need to do these things anymore. I'm good. I've made it this far.
Yeah.
And I've heard their stories when they walked back in.
Yeah. And that's what I was talking about last week a little bit, that therapy sometimes, even when you're feeling good, sometimes that's exactly the point where you may need it more, because you have to make sure that your tools are good for when you are feeling good, so you don't regress or whatever. Yeah.
And whatever behaviors or triggers or whatever it is that I have and that other people have, that's when they get us, is when we are not, when we get complacent and we figure, I'm good, I'm set, this can't happen to me. And that's why a lot of people, they don't like going into recovery groups, because they all they do is talk about what happened, and all they do is talk about bad. It's like, well, you're missing the point. We're reminding ourselves of why life is better today. And we do that by talking about what we were like.
Yeah.
And that this is, this phrase of cunning, baffling, and powerful is true. It's really true. It's a subtle foe, because it's something we go, it's no big deal.
Yeah.
It's no big deal.
Yep.
But, for some of us, it is a big deal.
Well, and it can become a bigger deal, similar to anxiety and depression do that to you too. At first, you're just like, I'm a little anxious, or, I'm having a bad day, whatever. And then, it becomes, similar to drinking, to where you're just like, someone says, hey, you're drinking quite a bit. You're like, oh, no, it's just, I'm having a bad week, and then it can turn into more and more. And, you realize that before long, you've actually fallen face first into it, and you do need some help. So, you have to be, like you said, they both can be very subtle if you're not really careful. And especially once you've gotten out of that, you hopefully are a little more aware of those traps, so you don't fall back into them. Because, even really subtle, like I was listening to a podcast the other night, and the guy was talking about the comforts of depression. He's like, on my bad days, he's like, you know what I do? He's like, it isn't that I lay around feeling sorry for myself. He's like, I'm in bed with the covers up over me. I'm watching a movie, or I'm watching like wrestling that I really like watching. And he's like, and I just feel comfortable. And I'm like, oh my God, he's so right. But that is what a lot of it is. And it isn't that you feel bad necessarily sometimes. It's just, you feel safe, or you feel, and that lure makes you go, this isn't so bad. And so now it becomes day 2 and 3, and that little subtle trap,
That's and this goes to so many different things. And when I went to California, I talked to some friends of mine who, they have either an alcoholic in their life, or, somebody else that's maybe not necessarily good for them, and you hear this story all the time where it's like, well, most of the time everything's fine.
Yeah.
Most of the time everything's fine. And that's how we get lured back into situations we shouldn't be in, and sometimes they can be abusive.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time it's fine. And so who wouldn't play the odds? Well, it only happens every once in a while.
Yeah.
It's so hard for us to do self-care and go, yeah, but that once in a while is too much.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's a work situation or personal situation, friendships. I mean, friendships are the worst.
Yeah.
You sit there and you go, oh, we've known each other for so long.
Yeah.
And most of the time everything's fine.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you built up that equity, so that allows you to be a complete, a jerk or abusive, like you said, to someone at some time, and they're just supposed to eat it and kind of roll with it. And it's like, no, you shouldn't,
Yeah, those are those, I think that's that point where I like to talk about that, there's acceptance, but there's also the point where you make a decision, that's that. Yeah. Yes. Acceptance is part of anybody's, recovery and, getting better, whatever your thing is that you're, getting better from. Acceptance is usually is a wonderful tool for us to get through the tough times in life. But there is a point where we actually don't accept things and make a decision to change stuff.
Yeah.
That's where that, usually, like the whole idea of the serenity prayer is great because it deals with the thing that we can really change, which is us.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than and that's where that acceptance comes in. It's like, okay, I can't change you. I have to accept you for who you are.
Yeah.
But I can change me, or I can physically move me.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
These are all, there's a lot of these. This is the other part that I'm really grateful for. This is my mind has opened to I like these phrases now. It's like I bought one of my mentors a book, and it's literally, it's all of the phrases that we hated when we first got into recovery, but now use them all the time.
Yeah.
Because there's a reason they get used all the time. They're true.
Yeah. Yep.
And we hate, I like doing every once in a while, I'll be at a meeting and I'll say, hey, let's talk about the ones you hate the most and the ones you use the most.
Yeah. Right.
Right.
It's fun. So anyhow, right. I want to say thank you to both of you and to everyone that's reached out to me, one way or the other, for whether it was just to say something nice or to, I've had some people call me and say, hey, can you talk? And it's been like, yes, this is a part of, this is service for me, is to share this and, to to have the opportunity to, make connections and make friendships with people at a level that I never thought. I've told you guys about a friend of mine that had a really bad anxiety attack a long time ago.
Mm.
And that's where I kind of understood anxiety. My friend Chris, and he called me yesterday. And Chris is in the early stages of Huntington's disease, and which is, it's basically Alzheimer's meets Parkinson's.
Right.
First you lose control of your body and eventually lose your mind. It's fatal, right?
Yeah.
And Chris called me last night, and he was in a funk. He's been separated from his wife for a while now. It's been, the divorce has been, I think, finalized about 6 months. They really haven't been around each other for probably been a year and a half, but she's finally met somebody else. And it finally hit him, and he was calling me, and, he's in a bad place. I don't know what to do. He's going into that hole, right?
Yeah.
And we started talking a lot about, I don't even know what to do with my life. I don't know anybody. I'm sitting here going, I even suggested, it's like, get online, you can make these connections, but he doesn't want to hear it. He can't hear it.
Yeah.
And all I can do is share, it's like, well, why'd you go to Michigan? And start explaining everything.
Right. Yeah.
Cause there's people that I consider my friends now.
Yeah.
That I'm meeting for the first time.
Yeah.
Because we share our lives together, even if it's just on Skype.
Right.
And so all I can be is, I can't get him out of that hole. He has to get himself out of that hole. And that's the hard part.
Right.
I just tried to be a supportive friend yesterday and share what I'm doing.
Right. And at some point when you realize he's trying to get himself out, then you can, offer the helping hand. But until he's really trying to climb out himself, like you said, it's really difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause I do want to save my oldest friend.
Sure. Absolutely.
Well, you just got to be careful, because sometimes giving a hand to help someone who's in a hole, they can pull you into the hole.
Yeah,
exactly. And that was my other friend who my buddy Andy, who I went and visited in Michigan. And remember I said I wasn't sure if I wanted to go over to his house, but I'm like, you know what? I'm close enough to Kalamazoo. If I feel myself getting pulled into that hole, I have a car. I can go somewhere else.
Right.
Right. You just got to be aware.
Yeah, and everything ended up being great. It was fantastic. I had a wonderful time. It was fantastic. And then it was last week or so. It was so funny because I was telling him about Chicago, and I was telling him about the experience of going to the Van Gogh Museum. And I start telling him about how they set up the thing with the multimedia, and he suddenly starts going on like this, oh, they did, kind of like talking about like how it, like he knew what they did and why it wasn't good to do it that way. You're like, oh, they did a multimedia thing, blah, 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 blah. And I just got quiet. I got quiet and I let him go for a while, and I was just completely silent, and he got silent and he goes, hello. And I'm like, oh, well, I guess I didn't need to share. You seem to know everything about my trip more than I did. And what was amazing is it continued to be like that.
Wow.
Really?
Phone conversation. Yeah, I was sharing them about this stuff that's been going on with work. There wasn't I'm talking to you guys right now. You're listening to me.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you're going to share something, that's relevant to it. He kept interrupting and telling me what I should do or how things are or blah, blah, blah. And by the time I got off the phone, I was just like, yeah, and we probably won't be talking for a while.
Yeah, it goes to that, again, I keep always referencing the distorted thinking worksheets that I have, and one of the things on there is the constant need to be right, or to constantly offer suggestion kind of a thing, and that's one of the things that's on that sheet. And, that's a hard one for a lot of people, because when they hear people say, the thing is, you weren't complaining. Usually people will do that when they think someone is complaining. But you're talking about how you had an awesome time. It's weird to then tear it down. That
he wasn't, Yeah, exactly. He wasn't listening to me. He was waiting for his turn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just the truth. And after a while, the conversation started getting really frustrating because and the reason I bring this up is because having such great examples of conversation that really works, that I love, that I get something from, that when I get done, I feel better compared to the conversation where I just feel frustrated.
Yeah.
Comes back to, okay, self-care time.
Yeah. It makes it easier to kind of figure out which conversations are the ones you want to continue to have too. And it stinks because, it's an old friend, but you start going, if all I'm going to do is get frustrated talking to this person, at some point you go, why do I want to keep putting myself in that situation? And like you said, you go back to the self-care. I've done it too with people where it's like, listen, every time I talk to them, I get mad or I get frustrated. Or it's like, I'm done with this. Like, I don't need that. I'm trying to fix myself. I don't need these things, You know
what? You just said the most, that's exactly it, is I'm trying to get away from when I was like that with somebody, when I felt like I needed to fix everybody. I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like I'm trying to find a positive outlook on life. I'm trying to find where I'm sharing experiences with people. I want to nurture relationships, and it's harder now to be around the ones that maybe just aren't that good, for that. So
yeah.
Well, it's trite, but the saying is there's a season, and it kind of is with friendships and stuff. There is a season, some of them last many seasons and stuff, and some are just a season long, but it sucks. Nothing's worse than having to recognize when a friendship has run its course, basically, and you never shut the door completely, but you do have to step away. You have to recognize sometimes it's like, okay, this relationship is no longer beneficial.
Yeah.
I'm not getting anything out of it, and I'm not giving anything to it.
Yeah.
So we need to step away. Maybe at some other point we can come back together and rekindle things and find that magic that was there before. But for now, the best step is space and distance.
Well, that's the thing is, sometimes you get around people and, it's always fun to reminisce with people and stuff, but sometimes you get around people and you've known them for years and all they want to do is talk about 15 years ago. Yeah, and you're like, that was cool, but that's not who I am anymore. Yeah. And at some point, even people like that, you're kind of like, we're friends, but it's like, what made us friends at that point wouldn't work. Like if we just met without having that history today, we wouldn't really we wouldn't be enemies or anything like that. We just run differently now. It'd be like, oh, hey, you're a nice guy. Cool. Hey, whatever. If we ran, if we ended up somewhere and had dinner, that's cool. But we wouldn't really run in the same circles. And I think a lot of people that's what happens in a lot of friendships is that you change. And whether both people do or one does and the other doesn't, whatever it is, sometimes it just happens. Even if it's something that is one gets married and the other doesn't.
Yeah.
That drastically changes someone and their life. I've had that where friends of mine have gotten married, had kids. They've drastically changed. And we don't have much in common because their life is about their kids, and it should be, and my life doesn't work that way because I don't have kids and I'm not married. So we've essentially grown apart, and it's fine. It's just how life works sometimes, and it's a little sad because we used to be super close, but it's just, it's how it has to work, but sometimes we come back together and there's still moments there, but it's, it's just never going to be what it was, and that's okay. That's just how it has to work, So it isn't all bad. Yeah.
Yeah, and even though the conversation with Chris was tough yesterday, what made it all worthwhile was at the end he said, every time I talk to you, I always feel better, and I was like, thanks, Chris. Because that's how I feel.
Great compliment.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, well, then you know what? This was the best 2-hour conversation I've had. This week, it really, it is. And that's somebody that, you know, when he calls me the next time or says, hey, he usually sends me a text. He's like, I need to talk. And it's great. We do that thing like I was talking about. All right, when are you available? You know, what time works best for you? We work it all out so that I could, you know, sit down and give him, you know,
right.
and give each other.
Right. You're not getting that text from him and going, you know.
Yeah. And that's a friendship to me. Those are, you know, we respect each other in our time and stuff. So
yeah, that's
good.
Right.
Yeah. A couple segues aside, that was, my week's pretty good.
Yeah. Your week's awesome.
Yeah. That sounds like a pretty good week. Yeah.
How about you, Bryan? How was your week been?
My week was not so good.
Aww.
Because I mentioned on the last episode that I was going to be starting a new antidepressant, and I started it, and the first night I took it and, you know, didn't really notice anything, because a lot of times you don't the first night. You know, it usually takes a little while to build up in your system. But on night 2, I took it, and about 2 hours after taking it, I noticed like I was itching on my lower back, and, you know, I scratched it and not thinking anything of it. And about 15 minutes later, I was like, I'm itching really, really bad on my back. And now it's from my shoulder blades down. So I go in the bathroom and I look, and I'm like, I have hives all the way down my back and on my legs. And my palms of my hands are really red and itchy. And I'm like, oh man. Some backstory. When I was in high school, I had an allergic reaction to something, and I'm still not exactly sure. It was a medicine of some sort, but we never narrowed it down all the way after I had my tonsils out my junior year. And I had hives off and on for about 6 months. And these kind of hives, like almost full body hives. So we never could quite figure out what it was in that time, but they were horrible. And so I'm like, oh man, because I get them from time to time, and not usually that bad. Usually I'll just get a few, but these ones were bad. So, you know, I called the doctor, and he was like, yeah, you're done with that medicine, obviously. And, you know, Benadryl time. So I've been doped up on Benadryl most of the week, and I'm still itchy. And the worst part is now where I'm itching the most is the palm of my hands.
Means you're going to come into money.
Yeah. And so it's just like every once in a while I've had to like grab onto like a can of pop or something like that to try to cool my palms down, because they're not as red today, but I mean they were literally like red on the insides and so itchy that I couldn't even like close my hands because it would make them warmer and then they'd start itching worse. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
But on the other side, are you sleeping?
You know, no, the Benadryl actually hasn't really been knocking me out. I've just been in that like groggy area. It's when I take it before bed, like when, you know, as I get kind of tired, if I'm taking it, it's helping me fall asleep. But like through the days, I've been kind of just, you know, in that funk from Benadryl like all day. But I've had to be, because if I'm not, then I'm itching like crazy. Have this big ice pack. It's like a big gel pack that stays cold for a long time, and I'm wrapping that in a towel and putting it on my back to try to keep the area cool, and taking cold showers. And yeah, it's been a great time.
No.
Now, one upside is that at least I found my allergy to this in the first couple of days. So again, there's no chance of withdrawal. So at least I don't have to deal with wicked mood swings from the medicine or something. So, but
do they know what it is that causes the hives? Like what part of the medicine causes it?
No, it's just something in there I'm allergic to. So they'll basically have to, if anything is made similarly to it, they'll have to avoid. Kind of like I'm allergic to penicillin. So anything in the penicillin family is right out for me, you know, so. And who knows, maybe this has got, I never did look, maybe this has got something in the family or something, I don't know. But, so yeah, I go to my psychiatrist next week, so I'll get to try number 4.
Yay!
Ugh. Yeah.
But and it's tough. The journey on medicine is tough.
Yeah. This is the worst. I mean, honestly, you know, the nightmares and the bad thoughts were bad. This is worse because you can't do anything about this. At least with the others, I could distract myself a little bit. With these, it's hard to distract yourself when basically all of you itches. you know, and you can't really scratch because if you do, it just makes it worse. So yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah. Well, I've had a pretty good last couple weeks because I didn't get a chance to talk to you guys last week. I've been doing really well because I went off 2 of my meds, and I've been doing really well. I had one relapse, one bad moment, which to me was bad, but I think I managed it well enough that others around me, because it happened at work, and I was talking to somebody on the phone, and they were making a joke, and I didn't pick up on the joke, and it got confusing, and I feel I was too loud, and I not overreacted in a bad way, but kind of, it was just weird, and I think I acted oddly, and it's almost like the mask slipped a bit, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And I could feel the disease there, and I could feel the mental illness there, and it just brought to light that it's there.
Yeah.
Just because I'm not taking the medicine, I'm feeling it more, but I can handle it. And that was the kind of my aha moment because I thought about it that night. I came home, and of course, replaying in my mind and, all of this stuff, which again is all me. Like, I honestly don't think anyone else noticed, other than I was loud. I was laughing a little too loud. I was just a little bit too over animated.
Yeah.
Other than that, I don't think anyone really registered anything.
And that's probably true. There's probably a good chance that no one noticed. Yeah.
But to me, it was a big thing.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So, in my head, it was huge. But I was able to keep enough awareness about the whole thing to understand that to me it's huge, but to people around me barely even probably noticed or was a blip on their radar. So I really worked hard at processing through it, of shutting down those voices, shutting down the replays, using all of my mental tips and tricks and stuff that I've picked up along the way, and really focus hard on it. And I was able to kind of manage my way through it. I thought about going back on the medicine. I'm like, you know what? This is one slip. Yeah. Could there be more bigger slips, bigger issues coming down the way?
And
do I need to stop this now?
Yeah, and that's a legitimate question. I mean, if you do have one, that's something. Now, I did your doctor suggest anything else since you went off of 2, or were they just?
They don't even know yet.
Oh, so you're being naughty, not taking my advice. I see. All right.
Dr. Heal Thyself.
Kids, don't be like Jen.
Don't do what Jen's doing.
Don't do what Tiny Don't does. As The Simpsons said. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough.
So I owe them a visit.
Okay.
And I know I owe them a visit.
Okay.
I am still on one medicine. The biggest concern is there's nothing regulating mania. So if I happen to go into a mania episode, I have nothing in my system that's regulating it.
Right.
So
I am trying really hard to keep a straight face, but in my mind, I keep picturing Hulkamania. Every time someone says mania in this context, it's so hard for me to not picture Hogan doing the "what you gonna do, brother?" and it just. I hate it so much because I know it's a serious topic and I want to be serious, but I can't help it. Yeah.
Well, that would be a very interesting thing if she suddenly tore her shirt open.
Yeah, that would certainly change things.
A little different,
right? Yeah.
A little odd.
Maybe they might have noticed that one.
Yeah,
So there's that.
Right.
There's a win for the week.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Didn't
true.
Rip your shirt open.
Right. She's just really standing there at work, and everyone's like,
But and it was one of those things that I managed through it. And, I'm still on I'm on one medicine that helps to keep me regulated, which, is helpful and stuff. So, but it's very mild.
Yeah.
And, it just kind of takes a little bit of the edge off. And I'm making sure that I'm communicating very, very, very well with my fiance, since obviously he lives with me. So, he's the one that's closest to seeing what's going on.
Right.
And, and talking with him on it and stuff, and making sure that he's watching me.
Yeah.
For any signs of any sort of negatives.
Yes.
So I'm doing it as responsibly as I can without my doctors.
Right.
Which is not a good choice, and I openly admit that it's not a good choice. But
Jen's actions do not reflect the opinions or of the Crazy Life program.
Attitudes of the Crazy Life podcast.
Yeah.
Don't do this. But
your doctor's not there for you every day, so you still have to do these other things no matter what.
Right.
So at least you're doing them.
Yes.
Yes.
But I have a question now. Are you noticing other things different? So obviously, if you had this little event that occurred, so that means the medicine's not doing something. Have you noticed other things? In your day?
I'm more animated. I'm more talkative, and I'm more excitable.
Which makes sense.
So I have to make sure that I'm aware of these things, and most people attribute it to me just being bubbly. And, it's like, oh, she's just so happy and bubbly and stuff. And which is fine and good. And I've been there long enough now that they're getting used to my quirks and as we all have quirks and different things, but, most stuff is still, it's like, oh, that's just Jen. So it's nothing that's too over the top. I'm curious to kind of see how things go. I had a ride along with one of the drivers, cause I work in a logistics area, and, one of the drivers, he drives a large truck, and a semi, I should say. So I rode along with him the other day, and that meant spending, close to 4.5 hours with a perfect stranger in a cab of a truck, which could cause a lot of anxiety and a lot of, negative thoughts and a lot of, you should have said this, you should have said that, a lot of talking in my head, but it didn't. And, I was very surprised. I'm actually quite surprised at the lack of, symptoms and stuff.
That's good. Okay.
Yeah. So I really feel like I'm in a good place, that it's, that I'm managing everything through healthy living and stuff like that, and making sure I have my support systems and stuff. All of that seems to be doing its job. I'm definitely not opposed to going back on the medicine. I'm keeping that as a very viable option.
Mm-hmm.
But for now, I'm kind of seeing it through. And I'm definitely I'm being very cautious and very aware, trying to be very aware of things that are going on.
Right.
So, but yeah, it's been good. It's actually been very good the last few weeks, and I haven't really seen any negatives so far.
Good.
So,
good.
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of segue with this a little bit. That there's a podcast that I listen to called Risk. And this week there was a guy, and this is a very extreme example of it, but the last story on this week's episode, the guy talks about a manic episode because he's bipolar. And he talks about an unmedicated manic episode he goes on to where he thinks the government is out to get him. And he explains it in great detail. He tells a great story. I don't like his delivery style because he's one of those guys that kind of repeats himself with crazy voices, and I don't like comedians that do that. That's just me, but the story is good. So anyone who is listening, now I will warn you that if you listen to that show, it many times contains things that are very not safe for work. I'm pretty sure that episode may. But his story is fairly safe for work. I think maybe some language, but it's the very last story, and his name is, I think, John F. O'Donnell, if I remember correctly. And it was just an interesting thing. Like I said, it's a completely it's a really interesting take on a bipolar manic episode. So anyone who's listening, you might want to go check that out to kind of get inside the mind of somebody who's experiencing an episode and how far it can actually take somebody.
It's quite the roller coaster. And
yeah, I mean, his is way further than anything like that I've seen you go through, but that doesn't, it doesn't minimize what you go through or anything on that ilk, but it's still
never a competition.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just to show how different it can be, it can really do some crazy tricks to people's minds. It is a wicked mental illness. So,
and the worst part, you are in that moment.
Yeah.
So it's like, you are in that moment. You are living that moment.
Yeah.
So whether it's reality or not.
Oh yeah.
It's your reality.
That's what this guy describes. I mean,
yeah.
he flies to Ireland to get away because he thinks the U.S. government thinks is coming after him because he uncovered some plot thing. And I mean, it's this huge long story. I mean, it is crazy how far down the rabbit hole his brain went. And, he calls his mom at one point and she's like, "We're worried about you. We just want you to be safe. And did you take your medicine?" And he's like, "Of course not, because, they're trying to control me with my medicine." And, like that kind of, it's a crazy story. And I'm not using crazy, you know what I mean?
That's heavy.
It is. And that's why I said, if people listening should go check it out. It's a good show anyway. I enjoy the podcast anyway, because it's just people telling stories and they're all over the place. Sometimes they're funny, sometimes they're just heart pulling, but they're just all over the place. But this one was, just relevant to this show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting, and I've been very fortunate and happy that I'm still staying fairly even keel.
Yeah.
I attribute part of it's to my age, part of it's to the techniques and stuff I've learned. But yeah, last week was a reminder. It really, that one shook me, because that was my a wake-up call, shall we say, that bipolar's still there. It's still in me.
Yeah.
It didn't go anywhere. I didn't get cured.
Right.
And it's something that I'm going to have to make sure I'm aware of, and I manage it just like you do manage anything else.
I was just going to say that the hardest part of all this must be now you're back to managing.
Yep.
And that gets tiring.
It does.
That was me. I used to have to do so much managing because of drinking and everything that went along with it. My personality defects and all that.
Yeah.
That's that's the thing I don't want to go back to, is managing everything.
Yeah. And you saw me when we were in Chicago. You saw me have to manage myself with stuff. It's so annoying, because that feeds into, because of my anxiety, that feeds into my the depression stuff, because you feel like you're a burden to people, because it's like, hey, I've got to go, at different times it's like, hey, I have to go back to the room because I have to go separate myself from the chaos for a little while. I have to go do this. I have to, and it sucks. And that's what I deal with. Like you said, you had to manage stuff because you're drinking. Jen's managing stuff because and it's tiring. It's the part that every day, for who knows how long, you're getting up every day and you have to deal with this. You have to manage something, not every day, maybe. Some days you can get up and you can kind of just, there's days I get up and I don't really have to manage myself. I can just kind of get up and do whatever, but most days I have to manage,
That's I think the difference between when you're in a period of whatever you want. I like the terms on the beam or off the beam. It's like when I'm on the beam, I'm acting, I'm not reacting. And when I'm off the beam, I'm managing, because I'm reacting to what's going on around me, versus when I'm on, I'm doing the things that I need to do so I don't have to manage.
Yeah.
Whereas you tend to be playing more catch up when you get off.
It really is.
Yeah.
I've had that with days where that really is what I'm doing. Like I'll like not do much for 4 or 5 days, and then I'll be like, I have to do this, and this, basically to catch up for the days where I did nothing, so yeah.
Yeah. So it's very, very interesting, and, not necessarily something I saw coming. So it was a little bit of a surprise.
Sure.
Just to kind of all of a sudden have it in my face again. And I was like, whoa, it's been a long time. It's been, 3-4 years, since I've had to manage through that.
Mm-hmm.
And to have those feelings again, to have those voices again, to have that whole shebang.
Yeah.
I mean, again, thankfully it was very minor and very minute and very, very controlled. So it wasn't that, it wasn't earth shaking or life altering or anything, thankfully. So, it's just going to be interesting, especially with I have a lot of big things coming up and a lot of pressure that's going to be put on me in the next, coming up in the next few months. There's in the next 5 months, it's only going to get more and more and more.
Yeah.
And as the pressures increase, I'm really curious and fascinated to see how my bipolar reacts to it.
Yeah. And, I know, and again, I'm not a doctor. I know there's been people who will go on antidepressants for 5 years or medicines, and then they will pull them off. And I know bipolar works differently than depression, but
sure.
Sometimes people will go off of them so that they can see, like, hey, I've learned a lot in these years. Can I deal with this without medicine? Yeah. So that's kind of where you're at this point is, is there a potential for me to maybe manage some of this? And again, from what I've read, it seems more like bipolar is not dealt with in the same manner. But again, not a doctor. So
I did have my psychiatrist did tell me that after 3 years, we could try.
Okay.
So he did say that we could give it a try after 3 years of being on medicine and see what happens and see where I'm at. So granted, I'm sure he meant that with his supervision and his involvement.
Yeah, I don't think he was like, hey, just whatever you feel like it,
Just whatever you feel like. Just stop.
Yeah. Then just stop by if you feel like it, Yeah. We can have a quick talk.
So I'm sure that was not his intent.
Probably not.
But, yeah. So
I'm sure you'll get a lecture too.
Oh, I am positive that I'm going to get a
because when lecture. I told my psychiatrist that I stopped my antidepressant, cold turkey, he was like, he's like, you don't want to do that. I was like, no, you don't. I was like, I'll never do it again if I can help it.
It's like, bad call.
He was like, especially the one you were on. I was like, I know. It was terrible.
Oh, and a little bit that I wanted to share with you guys that I learned tonight. If you ever happen to be in a hospitalized situation, you can deny anything and everything that you want to deny. So if you have doctors or somebody coming into your room saying, you need to have this done, you need to have an IV inserted, you need a catheter, you need this, you need that. You have every right to say no. Yep. And I never thought about that before, and someone shared that with me about their hospital experience, that their nurse came in and told them that, because in their particular circumstance, they had an IV. It was just a dry IV that they were giving them antibiotics through once a day.
Mm-hmm.
But the way they had set the IV up, it was really painful. It was causing a lot of pain in her hand because of the vein they were using or whatever. The tape, something was really bothering her and causing her a lot of pain.
Yeah.
And the nurse says, you just have to say no. And we have to remove it.
It's weird. If they're just giving it to you once a day, why can't they just walk in and hand you pills?
Well, it's easier for them to do it.
Because
she already had the IV in it.
Yeah, okay.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's like, really? I can just say no? And they're like, yes. You still own control.
Yeah,
We'll tell you recommendations. We'll tell you what we feel you should do. But you still own the control to say, I won't say this and I won't do this, or I don't want you to do this to me. So, note out there for everybody.
Yeah. Same goes for if anyone ever calls an ambulance to you, like for whatever reason, you can absolutely refuse transport. You do not have to be transported in an ambulance, and they have to go away.
Yeah.
My friends that are on the volunteer fire department, and they often get called out to the ski resort or for whatever it is, and someone refuses transport, and they have to honor that.
Yeah, I learned that
can't make you.
With a car accident I was in, actually, because someone called for an ambulance, and my parents were there, and they were like, oh, we'll take you in the ambulance. And I'm like, my parents were like, no, we'll just take him. We're here. And I wasn't, so badly hurt that I couldn't get in the car. So they were like, no, we'll just take him, because, it's obviously not cheap to, now later I could have, made insurance pay for that, but it was still the idea that
yeah. Yeah. You don't feel obligated, and that it's a great point with, we talked about on that about, going to doctor and taking control of art. Sometimes you need to take control of your health if something doesn't feel right. And part of that is also just saying, you know what, this is not working for me right now.
Yeah. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cause it shouldn't hurt if it's in your hand. It shouldn't hurt.
Well, we feel like we have to do this. Like we feel like we're, I get that. I feel like, okay, well, I'm here. I have to do what they tell me. And it's like, no,
Right. Yeah. Well, and part of it too is like, you assume that they're doing what's best for you. And it's like, well, if it hurts, I guess that's what comes along with it. Cause sometimes things that are done hurt, but it's not supposed to.
Another thing they do is if you are on bed rest in the hospital, they give you a blood thinner every day to avoid any blood clots or anything like that. She was getting released in a couple hours. They always give the blood thinner first thing in the morning on their first rounds. Mm-hmm. They came to her and they were like, well, time for your blood thinner shot. And she's like, no, this is stupid. I'm walking around.
Yeah.
I understand why you're giving it to me. I don't need it. I'm leaving in a couple hours. No, you're not giving it to me. And, again, one of those circumstances that they were saying, no, we have to give it to you because it's process and protocol and we need to do this. And she took her own health in her own hands. She's like, no, I understand the process and why you feel you need to, but you don't need to. So,
Fair enough.
Yeah. And that was a huge lesson that I learned today. I was like, wow, that just makes so much sense. And something that you never, ever would think of because we're so trained that doctors know best, police know best, anyone in the uniform, they're working in your best interest.
Yeah.
Yep.
You trust the uniform.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and most of the time it's true.
Absolutely.
It's just like that. Realistically, most of the time that shot wouldn't make that big of a difference. But at the same time, she doesn't. It's unnecessary. It really is. It's
painful. It burns.
Yeah, that's what I said. It's So why put something?
Where am I putting myself through that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Money.
Not. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like it's totally unnecessary. So why should she? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So just as a little tidbit, but already, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We talk a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I guess that's a good thing for a podcast.
We don't have a problem in that.
No, certainly not.
Well, I guess we should probably wrap up, and we'll just, we had a topic today for you folks, but we'll just save that one till next week.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll just roll it on over. That being said, if you want to continue the conversation with us, you know the drill. I'm on Twitter at Jen's Crazy Life. That's Jen with a G. You can reach us on our email at thecrazylifepodcast@outlook.com or our website, thecrazylifepodcast.weebly.com. And how can they reach you, Henno?
You can message me on Twitter at Ida Henno, and you can also find me on Facebook, Henno Heiter, and pretty easy to get me there too. If you ever have a question pertaining to recovery or anything like that, a family member, something like that, please don't hesitate to get a hold of me for any question like that. And if there's something I can offer, I'd be happy to do it.
Awesome. And you, Bryan?
You can also follow the Twitter account where I post when the new shows go up, or every once in a while I'll throw up a link to something that I kind of find interesting. I posted something yesterday, but I can't remember what it was. It was a link to, it was something about, I think it was things that, like it had to do with anxiety, I think it was. Like things that anxiety does to you that people don't realize or something like that. That I thought was it's a quick read. And it, not something that I thought would be like a full topic for the show, but I just thought, a real quick read. But that's over on Twitter at The Crazy Life Pod. You can find me on Twitter at Stunami. My other podcast can be found at salty_language or at saltylanguage.com. You can also find us on, we're part of the Tangent Bound Network and the Wicked Radio Network. And, let's see, I feel like I'm forgetting another link in there, but I always do that. So I'll just tell you that we're not doctors, therapists, or trained professionals of any kind, just three people sharing our experiences, and hopefully we can help in whatever way we can. If you feel that you need help, please seek out professional help or a support group or something to that effect. Don't self-diagnose or self-treat. Go get some professional help or seek out a game plan with someone else. And of course, if you are feeling suicidal, please contact the suicide prevention hotline number or a friend, a support team member of yours. Have them take you to the hospital or call 911 and tell them you're having a mental health emergency, and, they'll send an ambulance or whatever you need. But please don't be alone, because that's exactly what the illness wants. And, just don't let it win.
Word.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As we all know, and we've talked about many times on the show, is isolation and silence and darkness is what feeds the beast.
Yep.
So if you are in trouble, break through that curtain and ask for help. With that, everybody, keep breathing and have a great week.